Welcome, friends, whether you're out on a walk, running errands, or relaxing at home. It is wonderful to connect with you. Joining us today is Aaron Ryan. Aaron is an award winning and best selling author, speaker, panelist, workshop presenter, and voice actor. He lives in Washington with his wife and two sons, along with Macy the dog, Winston the cat, and the Finches Inky, Pinky, Blinky, and Clyde. Aaron, welcome to Phoenix and Flame.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you. I actually have a very sad, somber update in that the bird count and names have changed. So they're no longer, we can't do the Pac-Man, naming convention anymore because the quantity has unfortunately gone down. But our kids, after purchasing a Happy Meal from McDonald's, have affectionately named them Burger, Nugget, and Fry. So those are the new birds.
Okay. Burger nugget. I love this. I love the kids getting that creative space.
There won't be a quiz. Yeah.
All right. So I have so many questions, but before we dig in, I want to kind of just toss out a little bit more information for the listeners and or the viewers. Um, you are the prolific author of the best-selling Dissonance six-book alien invasion saga. You said one of which has been adapted for the screen and is actively being pitched to stream on the streaming networks. How's that going?
It's good. Actually, I'm really excited. Yeah, we're going a few different routes. So Dissonance actually was adapted by a Hollywood fellow. He's still not sure what that exactly that means, but it's someone who's in the Hollywood system, knows the producers, gets around, actually talks with them and pitches, writes good screenplays. He's won awards. So he's pitching them to major studios with the producers in meetings. And I can't say his name. I can't say who we've talked to. It's very, hush hush mum. And every time I do mention his name, then people go like, "Hey, pick me for my book." And he's like, "Not every book needs to be made a movie." And then the other ones were actually going through the Film Freeway Film Festival route, and they're winning awards, which is really flattering and exciting. So
That is
yeah, it's a good
fun.
deal.
Yeah. So, gosh, I could begin so many different places, but what comes to my mind first is for those listeners out there who are thinking about becoming an author, they're thinking about writing a book. What are your words of wisdom? What are your words of caution? What are the things and feel free to share in your answer your journey and why in the world did you go down this path? There's a lot of paths you could have gone down, a lot of things you could have done, Aaron, and you became
Yeah.
an author. Why this? And what words of wisdom, words of caution do you have?
Yeah, that's a lot of questions in one. Let me see if I remember everything. So I was digging through an old photo album my mom made for my wife prior to her becoming my wife. My wife, that is, not my mom. And I was looking through there and I found an old article that she had included. I completely forgot about it. I was in a young authors club at 10 years old. And there was a newspaper article done on it from, kids down in the Snoqualmie Valley. And it was like, oh my gosh, I'd completely forgotten about that. So I was supposed to be an author. You could call it fate, from the very beginning. It's taken a lot of different creative pursuits and a lot of different iterations throughout my life. So the creativity in storytelling hasn't necessarily always been in print in story form. It's been in poetry. It's been in voiceovers. It's been in music. And so lyrics, is a form of storytelling as well. But I think I was always fated to be one. And I think the purest, truest, rawest form of storytelling is writing a story. So, I love doing it. For those who want to get started in it, there's a lot of things I could say and a lot of bits of advice I could say. One, always be true to yourself. You don't need to be the next Tolkien, Grisham, Clancy, Collins, Lou, Asimov, Lewis. Be yourself. You've got a unique voice, and the world doesn't need more of those people. They're already there. I think Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken."
I
And
love it.
someone else said, "You're the youest you that you can be," or something like that. It was such a great quote. So be authentic, be, true to you. Secondly, I'd say, man, if you could steer clear of AI, please do. Don't outsource your work to a chip. We need an original voice. Editors can't bring out your voice if it's not already there, you know? Using it for like assistive purposes, I don't have a problem with that. But generative AI, big problem with that. It is disrupting both the voiceover and the authoring industry, both of which I'm a big part of. And third, I would tell people you must develop thick skin from the start. You're going to face a lot of rejection. You may think that your book is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it may absolutely fall on its face after you publish it. I've got a lot of books behind me for those joining us visually, and not every one of those has been a bestseller. Not every one of those has cracked the top, 100 on Amazon. You have to run promotions. You have to constantly market, constantly share. There's a lot to do, but wrap it all up, put a nice bow on it. It's a very worthy pursuit.
I love this. I love this. So I'm going to make one other comment about that, and I really wanted to get more into your personal journey. I remember talking to someone one time, and I said, sometimes I feel like a cup of water in an ocean. And so
Mhm.
for someone and I in authorship, I think most people from what you were saying, people wanna feel like they're making a difference. They wanna feel like what they have, being the most you can be and that kind of thing. What would you have to say? Because I know I'm not the only one that has that same mentality of, okay, how to launch out, how to keep the energy like you're describing, because writing it, that's just the beginning, because then you have the
Mhm.
publishing, then the editing, the publishing, the marketing, all the things, Aaron. So
Yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of energy that needs to be put behind that. So if someone's feeling like, what's the point? Let's say there's someone out there who's super talented and they have a lot to share, but they look around and see how many authors, how many books are out there and thinking, why I feel irrelevant. Why bother?
Right.
Especially when they need
Right.
energy to keep going. What would you say to those listeners or viewers that are on that path?
That sounds very much like imposter syndrome. Who am I? What do I matter? And in the light of, or when stacked up against a Tolkien, or a Tom Clancy or Michael Crichton or whoever, who am I? And I absolutely get that. I was wearing a shirt yesterday. I make these custom shirts so that I can wear them out of the grocery store. People will go, "Oh, are you an author?" And I go, "Well, yes, I am." And then it's a great way
That's
to,
awesome.
it's a conversation starter. I love it. uh, Vinyl lettering on the back of my back window of my van so people can see that I'm hopefully driving safely, and and will look me up while also driving safely, and or make a note to look it up later. It's probably so many crashes always happening behind me. But yeah, the imposter syndrome thing is huge. I don't know that I've necessarily ever struggled with that because I've always wanted to do it. Here's what I'd say to those people that are, who am I? And in light of, there's 7,500 books published every single day on Amazon. Why should mine stick out? I write because I would, for many reasons. One of which I would love it to be my livelihood. I'm a voice actor who also does authoring at this point. I would love that script to flip someday and be an author who also does voice acting. And this is paying our mortgage. Right now it's this, and that's okay. But you don't get there in a heartbeat. It takes a while. But the imposter syndrome thing, man, one of the main reasons why I write is I love seeing it go from here, without dropping everything, to here. And this is I designed the cover. This is three books in one for those joining us visually again. This is a hardcover, I think it's eight by 10-ish version of my Talisman series that's all three books in one. And I love these types. It's a big book. I love this, but I love more than anything else holding this in my hand and going, I did this. I accomplished this. If nothing else, I accomplished this. As a little boy, I was in second grade. We were all given an assignment by Mrs. Walker. Hi, Mrs. Walker. And she's probably deceased, but I made this story called The Electric Boy, and it was a huge, like, blatant copyright ripoff of Alan Dean Foster's novelization of E.T. I didn't know copyright infringement at the time. I didn't know you could steal this and put it here. But I wrote a story called The Electric Boy with construction paper and three-hole punch college lined paper and crude stick figure drawings. And it was just a silly little novella, but I remember holding it in my hand at 7 and going, I did this.
Oh, love it.
And going, Oh my gosh, look. And so I've just repeated that process over and over again with music and CDs and books galore. Um, if for no other reason, do it to say, look what I did it. You could take great pride in that, even if nobody ever buys it. You want them to buy it, but you can take great pride.
Wow. So another question that's just popped in my mind is just in response to what you just said was, I'm really curious about what would you say to parents out there who have children that are similar to the little boy that you were? Because, there's different kinds of parental styles out there. There's different personalities in parents. And for the parents that might be listening right now or watching and they have a child who's behaving a lot like you described how you behaved, what would your recommendations be for them?
Foster it. By all means, foster it to the end of yourself with every extent that you can. Foster that gift. My son, who is now 10, is an incredibly crafty kid. Our tape and paper budget is through the roof. So I'm taking donations, and I'll give you the Vimeo or the Venmo address. He is incredibly crafty. Every single day, he blows my wife and I away with what he's created, three-dimensional stuff. Not and no, there's nothing wrong, like, not to belittle a painting or an art, a one-dimensional art form, but these are three-dimensional with scale and colors, and they're really close to the original shape that he's seen in a movie or a book somewhere.
Oh.
And it's just amazing. And so my wife and I joke, he's going to make a lot of money someday, and I want some of it. Uh, you, you as parents, you can inadvertently benefit, from that type of thing. Not that he should be the breadwinner. Don't put that onus on him, but um, foster it by all means. It gives us such great delight to see him go far. And I think, we joke also that he should probably be employed by Stan Winston's movie FX studio already. He just has those inclinations. He has that drive. He assimilates 5 minutes of a movie that we watch, goes, got it. And then he retreats to his craft desk and comes back with whatever he's seen.
Wow.
And, he misses the whole movie. But he's created something that's a perfect physical manifestation of what we've all seen in those first, 5, 10, whatever, 15 minutes. um, Nurture that by all means. If there's anything that you can do to explore ways for that child to have an outlet of harnessing that gift, strengthening that gift, you can bond over that, and never, ever, 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 ever go, just a minute, I'll look at it in a minute. I mean,
Hmm.
stop what you're doing. Wow, because it's so cool. It's just so cool.
That is awesome. Now, I want you to help tell us a little bit about the genre that you are in now. Um, what gave you the desire for that particular genre that you're kind of mostly writing in, and why that, and what are the pros and cons, and the feedback that you've gotten, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer because I'm very multi-genre. If you can see behind me again, there's sci-fi, there's business guides, there's a prayer guide, there's literary criticism, there's historical fiction, there's children's picture books, and I kind of get a wild hair, and I have to go down that breadcrumb trail and see it through to its end. I wouldn't have written children's books if I didn't have kids. I strongly believe that. So the three kids books, those are, a direct offshoot of having a 10 and a 6-year-old. I'm currently writing my first horror novel, although my alien invasion saga is horrific. Um, Probably the wrong word to attribute to it. It's phenomenal, but the aliens there's horror. There's Stephen King elements of horror in there. This is the current work in progress is called Blood Echoes, and it is a horror novel outright. But I belong mostly in my wheelhouse, which is sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, and dystopian. I love being in an environment where hope is the very last thing and the only thing that you have. Everything else has been stripped away, and it is threadbare, the hope that you have. But I love the quote from President Snow in Suzanne Collins' Hunger Games. He says, "Hope, it is the only thing stronger than fear."
Mhm.
And I resonate so much with that quote because it's that little flickering candle about to go out in the darkness, and that's what you zero in on, baby. Um, So I really belong in a sci-fi environment where the odds are greatly stacked against the protagonist.
And how much do we experience that in real life, where that's why we go. I'm an avid reader, and to me, that's my, escape of choice, right? The people use different things to escape the stress of real life. They just want to go somewhere else for a while and not have to think about the problems they have to solve. They just need an escape for good.
Yeah.
And reading is mine because I can just fall into someone else's life for a while and just kind of just enjoy that. So it's just when you can relate to the characters, because I hear you describing, characters that, hope is everything's been stripped away. And I'm kind of wondering too, as you've been on your path, whether it's through the voiceover the acting, what you call it, voiceover acting. Is this how
Voice acting.
voice acting?
Yep.
Or,
Hmm.
writing. You mentioned earlier about criticism and, pushing through, and I'm kinda wondering, you know, the hope and how what are some things that you have felt along the way? What have you experienced along the way? Maybe think of one example or, that you had to, was a criticism that you received, it was something a discouragement, maybe a doubt, wondering, I is this gonna happen? Is this worth doing? I think anyone, especially
Mm.
entrepreneurial people, because I would call myself a serial entrepreneur, and I interact with other people that are entrepreneurs as well, and it's not a path for the faint of heart.
The faint of heart. Yeah.
So I'm kinda and I love
Yeah.
that your theme of hope, so I'm kinda wondering if you could bring together your own experiences that might have driven this sense of wanting to write about hope when that's all you have.
That's a great question. I think speaking from experience, and I would say it was fairly traumatic too. So I'm a voice actor. I was very entrenched in the voiceover system from probably about 2016 on. I was gaining some notoriety. I was winning some accolades and things like that, and I was very inspirational. I mean, my branding is sci-fi enthusiast at heart. I'm very enthusiastic. I have a lot of heart in what I do. Brought the same thing to voiceovers when I was in voiceovers, but I found to my chagrin that there was a bit of an Illuminati at the top. Those people who kind of control all the strings. It's them who decide, who gets to speak and who gets the acclaim and who they'll direct people to and who is going to be kind of welcomed into their high school clique. And I decided after a while I was no longer. I always felt like an outsider, looking in. I felt like I was just beating my head against a glass wall. I could see what I wanted, but I wasn't going to be welcomed in. And I found that out very painfully through some, direct, very honest and cutting assessments of my blog that I contributed. I wrote 300 blogs that were meant to be very Dave Barry satirical and encouraging. That's all I want to do is encourage and affirm. Higher up Mucky Muck said, your blogs basically are nothing, and they're not funny and they're not encouraging, and you just want to have people buy your books. And it was like, wow,
Mm.
really hurt. It was just that is not and was not the impetus for me writing blogs. I took great pride in encouragement, and no one wanted to see my heart from the upper tiers. So it was really frustrating. I spoke truth to power. I was a little unkind in my word choices because I was livid at how I was being treated. So I basically shot myself in the foot and cut myself off intentionally from the voiceover community, which had grown very toxic online. Um, I shot myself in the foot. I was very alone, and right at that same time is when AI was making its foray into the market with Chat GPT and OpenAI. And so a lot of things kind of came to a head that forced me out. I was still doing voiceovers, still working for clients, but I was on my own now. I was no longer doing business coaching. I was no longer blogging because what's the point? And it just sapped a lot of creative fire right out of me. Um, and it was a very sad time, a very sad time. But I have to create. That's the thing that's just the driving impetus. I must create or I'm gonna blow up. I'll explode. And there's gonna be Aaron goo everywhere. And um
Red mist.
it's grizzly. Yeah, it's grizzly. Well, yeah, it wouldn't be like a it'd just be like a bleh, everywhere. So, but man, I realized long ago I really have to create or I will self-destruct. I have to do something creative. So I thought it was music. I ventured away from the VO community and ventured back into music and decided after a few months, like, this is way too expensive and just not getting the gigs. What can I do? And I was like, duh, I'm a storyteller. I'm a storyteller as a voice actor. I'm telling other people's stories. What is more natural than, and all my careers that I could walk you through, all of them have been about telling stories. I just resorted back to my first love, which was storytelling. Again, the Young Authors Club at age 10 and the book I wrote at age 7. And and I think I just have I have no regrets um from short circuiting that voiceover, um the tedium of it, short circuiting that process and backing out and then following my heart to where I really belonged. It was a really long answer, and feel free and cut as much of that as you want.
Oh, no,
But
I like all of that. Well, because on Phoenix and Flame, we tell real stories, and the listeners and the
yeah,
watchers, they're like, because they're walking this, and that's why I always try to be very respectful of who's listening and who's watching and where they might be on their journey. Because one of the things
yeah,
I like to talk about on my podcast is you're not alone. And so
right.
through the conversations that we have, letting other people know this, and so I love the organic conversation that you're having and the transparency about the journey. One of the things I'm wondering is through all of that, the being exposed to the like what you call the Illuminati, which we all understand what that means, and just the criticism and the path you were going, it turned out, well, not today. And so a lot of times when people are going through that, they have a hard time, alluding to the word that you used earlier was hope. They
Hmm.
have a hard time holding on to hope, and because they can't see what's coming, and they have a hard time keeping on going when everything they thought was going to happen is in a pile of ash at their feet. So
Yeah.
for you, can you look back and think of maybe one thing that helped to keep you drive? I know you talked about being creative. That was something that was you did. So I heard that. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you would share with someone who might be right in the middle of exactly what you're describing?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So an entrepreneur and a freelancer. I always have been. It's really hard for me to work for someone else's dream. And so gosh, this must have been back in 2007-ish when I first ventured out of full-time employment and ventured into self-employment. I was having all kinds of computer problems. Funnily enough, I'm right there again because my brand new PC I ordered from Origin, I had to send it back, and thankfully they're giving me a full refund. And I'm finally going all the way to Mac. I'm going to leave PC. I'll have Windows in parallels running if you understand any of that, but I'm going to run a Mac from now on. Um, and I'm familiar with Apple, but anyway, it's back then I was PC entirely, and I just kept having problem after problem after problem with this PC. I wanted self-employment so badly I could feel it in my teeth. I couldn't sleep,
Mm.
and I had all the makings. I had everything in place to become an entrepreneur and to pursue multimedia production is what I was trying to do. But this darn PC kept getting in the way. I had already replaced the memory. I'd already replaced the drives. I'd already defragged, if you remember what that
I
is.
do.
I'd already done over and over all these different things that we had replaced. And it was like, well, why don't you just buy a new computer? Well, this was the top of the line computer at the time. My buddy said, just go buy more memory. I said, I've already swapped out the memory. He said, just go buy more. I said, ugh, fine. I went and bought new memory. But before that, and it solved everything. Before that, though, I was so ready to give up. I was sitting, this is going to sound wrong. Um, don't take it the way it sounds. I was sitting on the toilet
Okay.
at 2 in the morning. I was clothed. I was sitting and I was bawling into a pillow. I was bawling into a pillow at 2 in the morning on the toilet in my bathroom because I wanted this so bad. And uh I remember talking to a client of mine at the time, graphic design. My computer crashed plenty while doing work for him. And he shared a quote, I think from Confucius, either that or it's a Swedish proverb. And it said, The temptation to quit is always greatest just before your greatest success. And that quote stuck with me. A lot of mantras I have in my back pocket, they've stuck with me. But I remembered that because I was so ready to throw in the towel, even though I could feel it right here. And I bought that memory, I installed it in the computer, and I've been self-employed ever since. And that's been 2000 since 2007. So we're going on 30 or what, 20 years now, I guess. No one said there'd be math. Is that right? The 20, 19 years?
You're mathing out
I
loud.
guess it's 19 years. Yeah. It's almost 20 years. Almost 2 decades of self-employment because of 2 memory sticks. And it has paid our mortgage. It has bought us several cars outright. It has funded my authoring dream. It has enabled us to give freely to others without asking for this financial gift back. It's enabled me to pursue wonderful hobbies of like having a custom Lord of the Rings book that is a keepsake, that is red leather bound and is silver foil stamped. I love this book. I had this made. I put pictures of the movies where they're appropriate to the running narrative. I had this whole thing made, and it cost a fortune because I had 3. The self-employment paid for that. So I am incredibly grateful for that Phoenix moment and the Phoenix moment of leaving the voiceover industry, because there were flames, but you have to endure those, I
Mhm.
guess.
Well, what you're describing reminds me of a conference I attended recently, and the speaker was talking about going from breakdown to breakthrough, and then wash,
Oh,
rinse,
that's
repeat,
good.
breakdown to breakthrough, then breakdown to breakthrough. It's not a one and done. It's a cycle, like
Wow.
wash, rinse, repeat, breakdown into breakthrough, breakdown into breakthrough. And I thought, wow. And for anyone who's lived long enough on this planet, and especially entrepreneurs, know exactly what that feels like. Um,
Right.
it's just going through that is just kind of the woman who said that is Dr. Brittany Ezell, Ezell. She was a former coach for an ETSU, women's basketball team. I wanna make sure I give her credit for saying that. She was
Yeah.
giving a talk on, you know, kind of athletically being resilient and being a leader and looking at it from an athletic standpoint, and how it's similar, trying to be a leader and try how it's similar to being an athlete, and she was the one that said that. Thank you,
I
Dr.
love it.
Ezell. Break
Yeah.
down into breakthrough, and then break down into breakthrough, and that's what I hear you saying.
I just typed it. So if you saw me, doing this, I have to save that. That's a wonderful quote. Wow.
Yeah, that's Dr. Brittany Ezell, and I'll try to remember and tag her when this podcast comes out. She's fabulous, and I'm wanting to get to talk to her more. So, in the last few minutes that we have, I'm kind of wondering, this is going to be a really hard question, and I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have a favorite book that you've written? Do you have a favorite child in your book groups? What's your
Yeah.
favorite one? Do you have one?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm working on book number 45 right now, so there's a lot to choose from. But it used to be a tie. So I really love my The End series. It's a Christian dystopian saga, and the finale in it is called The End Omega, and it is powerful. It's loaded with so much redemption and heart, and you're gonna cry. I don't care who you are, you're gonna cry. There are powerful moments of reunification in there and triumph with a capital Tr. I mean, it is so rich with heart, that book. However, as much as I love The End Omega, I wrote a historical fiction novel called Forecasts. It is a 9/11 historical fiction novel. I still to this day remain deeply moved by the heroism of the fallen heroes and victims of 9/11, the 343 firefighters, the passengers on Flight 93. And no, not a lot of people want to deal with that subject still 2 decades later. Or almost 25 years later. It's sad. I looked at that project as a catharsis for me. I really wanted to write something that would undo 9/11 and save all those lives vicariously in a fictional setting. So that's what happens. 9/11 is utterly prevented. I mean, that's the spoiler, but you know it's coming. But in that book, I actually there's so many Easter eggs, I've lost count. And in that book, it's written first person, but it migrates to third person because he has to split personalities at the end, and then it joins back to first person.
Oh,
And so it was such a challenge to write that book, but it turned out so good. It's so compelling, and wouldn't we all love to live in a world where 9/11 was prevented? So that's probably still at the top. And I also really love the Phoenix Experiment. It's the first book where I really incorporated a lot of prose. It's the first book where I wrote first person present tense. Um, so yeah, each one is new. Each one is exciting and different, but those are the top ones.
that's fabulous. Well, and I have to ask a question because I reached out to I have a cousin, Jill, shout out. She
I don't.
sh she's an avid, reader, and she works at a library, and she has her degree in library science and all this, and she had a question about the Christian dystopian, genre, and, she was recalling and referencing the Left Behind series,
Yes.
and she was
Yep.
saying that, her the feedback that she had received was that there was quite a few people that were, like, traumatized by that, by, I guess the concept of being left behind, if you were, like, a
Yeah.
younger person or like, "What the fuck," right? So, um, and so I told her I'd ask, and so I'm throwing it out there, and I'm asking, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that, that kind of feedback on the Left Behind series, and how did you overlay that with the books that you wrote?
Yeah, no, it's a perfectly valid question. So I was very inspired by the Left Behind series. I didn't actually complete it. I think I read through book 9 or something like that way back in the 90s and got distracted, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I should get back to that someday." There's a few profound differences between that series and mine. So the Left Behind series is really all about Revelation and the 7 year period called the tribulation, according to the Bible, before Jesus returns, and the Antichrist rises and the false prophet, and you've got the mark of the beast and blah blah blah. I was inspired by it, but that doesn't mean that the end is a carbon copy of Left Behind. The end is more a dystopian setting. The antagonist is a man who literally believes he is the Antichrist of Revelation. He's not. This isn't the tribulation period. It's not the period right before Jesus returns. It is very dystopic in that he is a madman. I mean, how many times in history have we seen people that have power and are just absolutely bonkers? And they are. I'm not making a political referendum here. Um, I promise I'm not. But they're dangerous. That is such a danger when you have someone at the top with that um, megalomaniac complex, and they're a totalitarian despot. I love this story because it is entirely feasible. I'm not going to say probable, but it's feasible. This man, under the in my series, because of who he believes he is hell bent on a second. Uh, Gosh, I'm now phasing out on the word. Um, when they killed off the Jews, uh,
Holocaust?
Holocaust. He's focused on a second Holocaust, and it's the extermination of Christians in the year 2113. Under the guise of a census, he has them all secretly branded by laser scan. He's got an army of mechanoid robots called Guardians. They're really only guarding him, and they are trained to hunt for one thing. And so they're going to hunt down Christians. This is impossible to extinguish, this mark. So it's about, again, clinging to hope, that threadbare hope, running and existing entirely in the shadows, taking down someone who, whether or not you agree with the Christian side or the exterminating Christian side isn't the issue. It's the issue of what is humane, what is morally right, and who is morally bankrupt here. You can't just go around killing everyone that you don't like. And so the stakes are super high in that series, and it just goes like this. It's an exponential curve to the very end of the end omega. So tell your sister Absolutely get it. If she liked Left Behind, get this one. It's not quite the same in that it's not Revelation, it's not the tribulation, and he's not the big A Antichrist. He's a little A Antichrist, but lowercase a.
Oh my
But it's
gosh.
good.
Oh, it sounds
Yeah, so proud
fabulous,
of it.
Aaron. So I know that my listeners and the viewers are thinking, "Oh my gosh, uh, how do I get access? How do I learn more about Aaron Ryan?" So the website that I have, and let me verify with you to make sure it's accurate, is author Aaron Ryan Group.com.
Well, authoraaronryan.com is the main domain,
Okay.
and that goes to my site with all the things and all the social links. But yeah, they can go to that's a forwarding site. Authoraaronryangroup.com is only a forwarding URL that will take you to a private and exclusive Facebook group where you can find out about the status of the screenplays. You can get discount codes and giveaways and upcoming appearances and news. But the main site that has the links to the other sites and all the socials is authoraaronryan.com.
Fabulous. Aaron, I really appreciate you spending your valuable time and your energy and your wisdom and your experiences with me and all of us on Phoenix and Flame. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, listeners, viewers, I know you have heard multiple things today that you're thinking, I have a best friend. I have a family member. I have a coworker that needs to hear what Aaron Ryan said. Take this podcast episode, copy and paste it, send it in text, send it an email, post it on your favorite social media sites so we can grow our Phoenix and Flame community and let people know you are not alone. I hope your
Yeah.
day is going great. I hope the rest of your day is fantastic. I'm Dana on Phoenix and Flame.